So now we've got the first layer, and now we need at least a second layer. But before we start the second layer, we need to identify the spots where we want to be later a little darker or a little lighter. When you look here, you see that any of those lines go in that direction. So I'm going to put a few of those here just to mark in which direction my stroke should go. Don't put too many, just count more or less 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, more or less 9 strokes, more or less 9 strokes. Here, I don't need to have too many because I see there's some highlights there. I'll leave those alone. I may do a couple here and there. That's it. Same thing here, a couple of them here, just to know where they are. This is going to be solid, more or less, solid. Later, we'll leave the highlighting here. But this basically goes in the same direction. This we're going to just do with the brush. We're not going to use a pencil to do them. Later we can do a few spots there with the brush. If we do it with a pencil and you do it in the wrong place, you won't be able to erase them later. So we are only marking the things that show as dark in our photo, okay? So I'm again going to mix my colors, and I choose again my cobalt blue and my burnt sienna. Okay, so why do I use cobalt blue again? It's because it's easy to remove if I make a mistake, okay? I'm going to be a little darker here, more intense. Now I have here, I'm going to have the brown. That's the burnt sienna deep from Da Vinci, which is more reddish color than the other burnt siennas that you might have. Especially if you have the burnt sienna from Winsor Newton, it has more yellow into it. So when you mix it with the blue, it gives you a greenish, gray, which you don't want. So if you have a greenish gray, add a little bit of that permanent rose to it, and that will definitely give you a much more neutral gray. See what I'm doing now? I'm mixing my blue and my brown again to get a base color. Let's test it. Okay, so it's a neutral gray and it's very transparent. Now I'm gonna have another puddle here with a little bit of the brown, right? I'm gonna have the other puddle with a little bit of the blue in there. So I can add some blue to my gray, and I can add some brown to my gray, so it changes. And I'm going to have a tiny bit of that pink in a puddle here for the same reason. I can always add it to it to give it more interest, okay? Don't make it too bright, because otherwise it will overpower everything else, okay? So you want it to be very similar in value, so you end up with some gray with different, with variations of color there. Okay, so what I want to do here is, we don't want to go as dark as they had here in this photo. I took this photo some time ago. We don't want to go as dark as here. See this value? When you compare this value to this value, I mean, the difference is definitely. Okay, so we don't want to go as dark as this value here, because photos always make things darker than they are. Here, yes, you can see that this one is much darker, and we'll eventually add a couple more things to it, but we will not get it as dark as it is here. Okay, maybe closer to the object, but not too far away. Here's the same thing. We don't want to go extra dark, but see what I mean with how it's lighter in some little sections? That's why we need to have this first color first, because now we'll go on top and later we'll be able to scrub off some of that color and it will reveal this color underneath, okay? So do I have enough of that? I think I do have enough. Let me put a little more blue to it. Let me double test again. More blue. Just was two. Okay, there you go. Okay, now, do I want to wet the paper? Yes, because again, I want it to run by itself. I don't want a solid line there. So I'm going to, again, get my brush, get a bigger brush. It's a size 12. I want to make sure it's nice and clean. And I'm going to get nice clean water over here again. So I'm going to go higher than I want, remember before? And I'm going to keep an even edge up here. I don't want that straight line, because if for whatever the reason your paint creeps up all the way, at least you're having an even edge. I don't know if you can see, it's all like mountains in there, very rugged mountains. So now I'm bringing this down, the water, nice and juicy, nice and shiny. Okay, so I'm going like almost a finger and a half above the paint I had before, okay? Just in case. Okay, now it's pretty sopping wet here. I don't want too wet. I don't want your paint to run all the way up. So we're gonna apply the paint here below and let it creep up in a couple of places only. If you have any puddles, put it vertical, let it drip to the bottom, and pick up the excess water on the bottom, okay? I didn't actually reach the bottom here, a couple spots, so. Okay, now, it's still pretty shiny, so I don't want it to be too shiny, otherwise the paint is gonna go creeping up like crazy, okay? So what I'm going to do is to dry my brush a little and absorb back some of that color, some of that water, so it dries faster. Okay, like I said, only do that if your paper is very, very wet. Otherwise, just wait, okay? So I have the paint here. I'm going to do like last time. I'm gonna start here on the bottom. It's not very dark. I'd rather have you do it 3 times than go overly dark. I just did that with another painting and I'm very upset because it has really ruined my painting and I have to now fix many problems. Okay, so that is it. Now, I can get some of that blue in a couple of spots. There you go. And I'm keeping it in a slant so the paint slides down instead of sliding up, okay? So sliding down. Okay. Actually, what we're gonna do is we're gonna go and mix really quick some of the blue, some of the brown, make them more intense. I'm making them pretty intense right now, okay? Look at this now. This is much more intense. And I'm going to, again, in a couple spots, go to the darker one. Oopsie, that one. Okay, that one, it went a little too crazy. So I'm going to pick up a little back. Okay, so I like that. Let me see a little more here, a little darker in this side, and maybe a little darker on this side. Always the corners, make sure your corners are darker, okay? So I think that will do the trick for me. It's too wet now to add any of the pink, so I'm not going to add the pink after all, okay? I'm still tipping it in an angle so I can pick up the excess at the bottom, okay? Because you don't want any blooms, so just keep working on picking up the excess paint. I want to let it lie flat for a few seconds and see where it's running. And I'm going to control where it goes. I clean my brush. I have my paper towel. And if I see that it's going too high up here, I might actually pick up with my brush. It's doing fine, so I don't have to worry much. But if you have to pick up something, fold your paper towel, let's say you need to clear over there, just go over that section and blot whatever corner you need to pick up. But do not let it go higher than that, because otherwise you're going to lose all your white area here, okay? So don't let it go any higher than that. See, I'm blotting some of this a little bit so it doesn't go too high up, okay? This one, a little bit maybe. So I'm pressing a little hard to erase that a little, okay? Here too a little bit. Okay, so now I'm satisfied with it. Yeah, it's not bad. So I'm going to dry it now. Okay, so now we observe this carefully. It's hard to see, but there's a reflection of this in here. What do? Well, I want to make sure that I paint first my grays, and then I will add as a, so what do? I personally like to first paint the base gray color and then apply glazes on top to change the color where I need to change it, okay? So basically, I might, so what we're going to do is to apply first the gray layer that we can see the lightest value here. See, all those highlights, they're actually not pure white. When you compare them to the pure white, you see they're pale gray. So we're going to apply a pale gray glaze to all the pot except for where the white areas are, okay? We'll start with the lid and go to the spout, dry, and then we'll work on the body, okay? And then the handle. So why didn't I give you the design with all the flowers and all the leaves and everything? Why? Because I want you to erase those as much as you can, just to leave a faint outline of those. I want to make sure that when you apply water, you're going to smear the graphite, okay? So whatever you have here already, it has to be very, very faint, okay? If you have one of these erasers, you can use it to pick up the excess graphite. So I'm actually going to erase with a soft eraser most of those outlines, so they're barely visible to me. I don't know about you, if you can see them, but this is still slightly damp, okay? So I'm trying not to touch too much. Okay, so color. This is a nice color, but it's gonna be too strong. If you look at it, you say, okay, that is pretty dark, okay? But when we compare to this little guy here, but think about it, it's gonna dry lighter, okay? And we're gonna apply clean water. So actually that is the right value, okay? That's the right value. Now you see it's dark in some areas, and ignore that. That's not a problem. Later, we'll go and work on those areas individually. But right now, just to position where the white and gray color is, I need to have at least this color in there. So let's revise this before we go start painting. Whatever you see solid red is because we're gonna leave it white. Solid, solid. I didn't do all this because it would have taken too much, but wherever you see a little line, that's what it is. All you need is a line on the perimeter, line on the perimeter, and a little farther out to indicate where you stop, okay? Line, little lines, little dots, little lines, 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 okay? Basically follow the directions. Wherever it's red, you put masking fluid, right? I forgot to put mine here, but I know I have to stop there. So I'm going to put my water just on the inside of those masking fluid lines. Clean water. Up here it goes a little farther up, closer to the line, all the way to the edge here. All right, now it's nice and shiny. I know I don't want to go too far in, so what I'm going to do is deposit the color. Remember, we're gonna do in different layers, so we can apply more later. Okay, so this is just for the first wash. So I'm staying on the center. And I'm going to let it drip a little downwards and go a little this way. But see, I'm not even getting close to my water edge, okay? Just let it slide. And now if you want to, you can have your paper towel, your brush. If it's going too far down, you dry your brush and you pick up the excess color, okay? If you have to. If you see it's going too crazy, you use your paper towel and you blot a little. Let's say it's going too high up here. Blot a little bit, okay? It's going too far down here. Blot a little bit. Very gently. You don't want to dry the paper completely. So that is okay for me right now. So I'm going to actually dry it, so it doesn't go any farther, so it does not creep. Again, I'm using a small brush so I don't go overboard. I don't put too much paint in there, okay? When you look at this photo here, you see that it was in white all the way here. Later we can add more, okay? But right now we just want a soft line there, almost reaching the edge. You're fine. If see, here is not white. Here it is white. So we can later add more over there. Now, all right, so I'm not going to use water this time because it's too small. So I'm just going to go in here and just paint the shape that I see here. As it's a little lighter underneath, but this is going to dry much lighter, okay? But if it got too dark in there, just press down and rub off some of that color. It has to go darker later in some sections, but at least that's the under layer. Now, this goes in an angle here. Angle. I'm just going to put a little color there. Okay, so now I put that. Now, what I'm gonna do is, yes, I'm going to get wet now here with clean water so I can have a soft edge there, okay? It's gonna be just a little water, not much, just a little strip. Clean brush, and I'm going to say, okay, it comes from about the center, a little farther back from the center, goes in a long, nice round shape here, okay? Almost like a quarter. And I'm just not going to paint with water the whole way. Just going to go here, okay? And then I'm just going to go and paint solid. I'm approaching the water here, right? Let it go into the water. And just, I'm painting just the rest. If your color is very dark, make sure that you lighten it up a little bit because you don't want to go too dark because we have some highlights over there, okay? Okay. There you go. So you keep your nice lines there. So we could go a little bit more. Okay, just little touch where the water was before. My brush is basically almost out of paint and it's giving me just a little excess of paint. So that's the first layer for the lid. Now we have to determine where we go here, right? We got that shape here, so we have a line here. It comes, it's just like a little farther down than halfway from here to here. So a little farther down than half, somewhere here. It's coming down past these leaves, so it's coming all the way to here. See the distance here? Let me see. I just don't want to make big marks. You can do interrupted lines like this, you know, like little polka dots to mark where it goes. Then here we go. We leave a little space here, right? And it goes in, and then look at the distance here. Okay, so I have to go a little farther down. Okay, it has a little shape here, and it goes, and it joins, more or less, it goes all the way to the center of the flower, more or less, okay? So now I have those shapes there. So I don't want them to be very, very dark pencil lines. So I'm again erasing them a little bit, just leaving barely any marks there, very faint, so enough that I can see them, but that's it. So I'm going to put that shape there so I don't forget that is there. So I'm just going to go with this color as is. I'm not getting the paper wet. I'm just going and putting the color right in there. This is dry by now, so I don't worry about it. This keeps going down a little bit and kind of stops there. Going up. If it's any darker, if your paint's any darker than mine, you better put some more water into it, okay? Because otherwise it's gonna be too dark. Make sure it's on the neutral side, or even a little on the blue side. Okay, there you go. So if I want a little blue, extra blue, I'm gonna, oops, that's too thick. I didn't stir my pot, so the blue became a little too intense. Okay, so good. So I'm dropping some of the blue in there, so it's becoming more blue. That's good. Okay, wet on wet. That's looking fine. Okay, that's good. Now, while we wait for that one to dry, we can actually work on the handle. The handle is also very pale gray. We have a few highlights that you probably put already, those little pieces of masking in there. So we're gonna paint it solid, very, very light. So I'm just going to grab some color and add more water to my brush as I approach this section, because this section is a little lighter and then darker again. So I'm basically adding water where I need it to be a little lighter and getting the pure color when it's a little darker. Again, this is just the first layer. We'll go later doing more. Oh, I forgot to mask over there. So I'm preserving that corner here too a little bit. And I'm working my way down, and I'm preserving also this section from being too dark, okay? I don't want it to be too dark. Later I can add a little color to it, so I'm gonna leave it white for the time being. I'm going to go this way. I'm gonna paint the whole thing down. Later will go darker. Okay, there you go. I should have done one thing, which is erase the pencil line here. Thank heaven I did not paint over it yet. So notice where is dark outline, which is fine, and where is light outline. Here is going to be dark, more or less, so it's okay. But where it's going to be against light, you don't want to have a pencil line. So you'll have to erase that. You will have to erase that underline too, so it doesn't show. You'll have to make sure that you don't have a hard line in many places, okay? But that's the beginning of that one too. Just doing good. Let's paint now this bottom part too, since it's just plain gray. Let's go for it. So we're doing the easy parts first, so you lose the fear of making mistakes in here, okay? By the time we reach this section, we are just going to add a little water to the brush, get the water here, and join the paint and let it spread naturally, okay? I can add a little blue to it if I want to. There you go. So now before I proceed I like to dry this to make sure I do not make a mess. Where do we go? I see that we need to have some color coming from here. We have some whites in here. Then we get again like a soft color like we did here, soft color coming down, down, down until almost disappears here, okay? So I'm gonna keep that in mind to do that. Now, like I said, plan to paint very, very pale. When you look at this color here and this color here, it's basically that same color, okay? So that color is working well for us, okay? So actually, I should make more to make sure we don't run out of it. So let's get a little more water. A little bit more blue. A little more brown. Let me test it again. It's pretty good. Okay, so it's very similar. Okay, I should have done that from the beginning, okay? So make a bigger puddle to make sure you don't run out of it. So you're gonna use it later anyway for another layer, so you can as well make a nice large puddle. But make sure this is the value, okay? Nice and light. Now, do we want to have a soft edge here? Yeah, okay. So I can actually start with clean water, right where it's supposed to be the edge, clean water. I go this way, I go this way. Okay, now to join this flower here, that's my edge. Clean water, boom. Now, I work usually in pieces. This blue flower here is gonna help us later fix problems if we have them, okay? Don't worry about it. Here we go now. We can go right over it. We're going to go belly, belly, belly. It comes all the way to the flower here. Round shape again, like we did before. Round shape, coming down, coming down. I'm putting plenty of water now, okay? Here, all the way down to the bottom here. Okay. And then I'm going to start painting with clean water, just in case in the areas where it's going to be some highlights. I'm putting a little clean water first. I don't cover the whole thing with water, just where the highlights generally are going to be. Okay, that section there, that section here too. And now I'm just going to paint with the color that I had prepared. Okay, I'm just going to paint solid. Right on top of the water that you had put in there. Okay, the belly. So I'm approaching. I'm not touching the edge of the water. I'm staying like a 1/3 of an inch from the edge of the water, and I'm letting the paint spread. So I'm painting only to the flower here, okay, and let the paint spread naturally by itself. Okay, there we go. That should be good. I'm gonna remove some excess paint from here because we're gonna have some highlight in there later. So I'm just picking up with my brush the excess. Here too, supposed to be a little lighter. Okay, there you go. So as you can see, it has a little bit of color everywhere, but the general idea is to cover all with a light wash, okay? Okay, so we're gonna be working in sections. It's much easier So now our next one is again the spout. But I don't know if you noticed that, but it has a little worm hint right on top. Could we mix it at the same time with the gray, wet on wet? Yes, but you might get green instead of the color you want. So I prefer to work it in 3 layers. So I did my first layer, I'm gonna do a second gray layer, and then later as a glaze, I'll add a little yellow after they are dry, okay? So I'm not gonna do wet on wet in this situation because it's too delicate. I think it's easier to work with glazes when I paint white ceramic. Much easier, much cleaner that way. Less chances of making mistakes. So anyway, so I'm ready for the spout now. This time we're gonna do it slightly different. This time we're going to get the color first and then add water where we want it to soften, okay? So I'm going to keep going down, down, down. As you can see, I'm going often for more so it doesn't dry on me. By the time I get here, see, I'm not going as far as before in this area, right? I'm going here, and then now I'm going to use water to soften that. So I'm gonna flip my brush, my painting, and I'm just going to put clean water here, and as I come close to it, I blend it together. Here I'm blending with the brush a little bit too. Okay, now I'm reserving this section for yellow later. It looks like a hard line now, but later with the yellow we'll soften it. Okay, so that's fine. We'll leave it like this. Okay, so now same thing with here. We need to get a few lines. So remember that color we had here before, the darker one? It's the same version of this, but a little darker, right? Okay, so a little more blue to it. I can go and here, I can actually do the dark line. Get some line here. Now I'm going to soften that with a little water, okay? Clean my brush, put water underneath, and then I touch it so it kind of softens that line, okay? Here in the bottom too, again, I dry my brush. Here we have a hard line, okay? I want to soften that, so what I'm gonna do is clean my brush, get it a little wet, put some little water over here, and then join it together. Okay, there we go. So we got a soft edge there. Now this here too, same thing again. I'm gonna get a little bit bigger brush. This one is a number 4. Okay, number 4. Here we go again. It seems like I didn't go very far into this area. I'm gonna get it wet again a little farther than I did before. And I'm going to get actually here. And I'm going to use this color first. Bring it down this way and paint all the way to more or less here. And I just stop there because that later is gonna be mostly yellow reflection. So I don't want it to be too dark over there, okay? So I stop in there. This is spreading beautifully there. Keep an eye that the top doesn't get too high. There you go, looking good, okay? Let me see a little bit farther here. The masking fluid will keep that line nice and white, okay? Okay, so that looks good. I'm just picking up the excess to keep it nice and white. Here it seems like I need to go a little farther here, so I'm going to go put a little color and tap it dry. Put the color and tap. So basically I'm putting color in the paper and controlling how much of it stays there by removing it with my with my paper. Okay, here, that's been a little darker here. I'm starting to get closer to the edge now, but I'm trying not to rub too much that edge. Remember what I told you, that otherwise the paint is going to, the outside will smear into. Okay, so I'm just dabbing color. My brush has barely any color in it. Okay, so I'm just displacing paint to control the darkness there. Okay, that's looking pretty good, but it's getting too high up here on the top, so I'm kind of blotting off a little of the excess. Okay, that's good. Now, like I say, this section seems to be the darkest one alongside that section too. So I'm going to, again, this time I'm going to approach with this directly. It goes section, it goes up here, then it goes down this way. Later we'll do the highlights. Don't worry about it too much now. We'll clear the highlights later. It goes like this, it goes like this. It gives you a little section here. Okay. Now I can actually switch to a little bigger brush. I'm using my probably number 8. Here, I'm not going to design this exactly as I see here. I'm just going to try to, but if I don't make it exactly the same, it's just fine, okay? Then we know that we have a highlight here too. So I'm just going to stop where the highlight, I think it is, and I'm going to work my way over the flower. I'm going to use the flower as my stop point, okay? I'm going to work this way, and I'm going to work this way. And I'm going to work this way. And what I'm going to do is what I did before, which is I'm going to go with the clean water. You have that shape now, right? You go clean water. You're going to put the clean water below the line, and you're going to approach the paint. Put the water next to it without touching. A little dry, and approach. Okay, oops. Okay, the good thing about this is that whatever mistake we make, they're gonna be easy to disguise later with the flowers. We can always add flowers. We can do, we can really correct many things. So I'm working in sections like I was telling you. So it came out the way I wanted. Like I said, later we'll soften those lines, so don't worry much about it. Here too, if it became a little splotchy, you can always get clean water on it, wait for a few seconds, and then blot a little bit, and that will remove some of the excess color if you have a blotchy appearance over there, okay? This is because this is the second layer on top of what you have already. So it's very easy to remove this layer, okay? So don't worry if it came a little stronger than you wanted. In order for you to see exactly how dark we need to go, I'm going to actually complete these 2 sections, or at least as much as I can, so you get the idea of how dark this should be when compared to that, okay? So I'm just going to quickly get some color here. It's approximate. I mean, it doesn't have to be exactly as we see it there. Just to get the idea. And this also gives you a break from the tension of trying to do the pot. So that releases a little bit of the pressure. Okay, so we got that. So now that you have the glass with the dark values there, you can see how light it still looks. Before you painted that, it was looking very dark, but no, it is not dark enough. So I'm going to get wet that section, following the pattern more or less that we find here. And I'm just going to drop color in there. I'm avoiding touching that highlighting. I'm leaving it. I'm not painting on it with water. I'm just leaving it unpainted. And I'm just going to put the water where I want to put color. So now this will come this way. I'll pretend that there's some jagged edge here, and I'm gonna stop right there. It's too much water, so I'm absorbing back some of it. Okay, so now I have this painted now, so I'm just going to drop my color right where I put the water and let it spread. See, it does not go into the highlight. It will just spread to where I actually put the water. Okay, I need to go a little darker here, and darker there. A little color here. Let it spread whatever it wants to go. Okay, just follow the water trail. Okay, so while that is like that, I'm going to create a shape for that strange thing here. So I'm kind of looking and say, okay, the water should go more or less this way. Like I say, it doesn't have to be exactly the shape, but kind of similar. So here we go too. With the water, I create a separation here. Okay, so that's my water. I'm gonna put it, especially here. That's where we want to go into nothing. It's much lighter there, right? So we don't want to put much color there. So we're gonna put the color here. That's where we need to go with the darker color. So we're gonna start from the darker section first without touching the water. I'm gonna add a little bit of the darker one to the bottom here. And then I'm gonna let it touch the water. And let it spread into the water. It's doing its own little curly things. I'm gonna direct it a little bit. If I see it's not going all the way where I want, I just dry my brush a little and kind of direct the flow. For whatever the reason, doesn't want to go there. Interesting enough. I'm going to just put some little color. There you go. There you go. So I'm using the darker color. I could use some of the dark color here too. Okay. I will let it dry like this for the time being. Later, if I want to add more things, I'll add more things. I just don't want to keep creeping and losing my whites. So again, I'm drying it. The bottom part also needs our help. So we're going to just paint it almost solid. It's just we're gonna add a little water towards the end, okay? So we're gonna start with this one. Seems to be lighter on the top area and a little darker towards the bottom. So I'm not gonna paint anymore over there, just the bottom area. I can start working on this. I'm running again out of paint, so I'm gonna make again a little more paint. Okay, so now you will think, oh, why don't we just have one gray and we don't have to mix them? Because all the grays that I have tried, they look they just don't seem to look right. They're either too neutral or too bluish, and they are splotchy when you apply them sometimes. They don't mix as well. These two colors, when they blend, they make a very nice combination. You know, other artists might do it differently. This is the way I do it, and it seems to work for me. So that's the way I personally recommend. Okay, so now the problem is you have to keep making your own mix and making sure it is the same again and again. Okay, looks like it needs a little more blue. That's why it's important that you test always. And your little piece of paper, so you have a chart. Okay, that seems to be pretty good. Okay, so that's the one we have. Then I'm gonna mix also too a little bit here too of the darker one. That's a little more dense. That's why it's darker, because it's thicker. Okay, I'm just grabbing the blue. A little more brown. See, that one is definitely more dense. It's the same it's the same color, more or less, the same hue, but it's a little more intense for the darker sections. Okay. Now, what I was going to do, the handle. Okay, same thing here. The smaller brush. Okay, we observe the handle. We see it's lighter on the bottom, gets darker here, gets much darker there on the edge, there. Okay, so now I see. I start with this one. Should I remove the masking fluid at this point? I say, not quite yet. Leave it still there. We'll come back to that later. Right now, I'm just applying the colors, then I'll soften the edges later. Right now, it's just applying the color. It gets a little darker here, darker here. I wish I had made some copies, larger copies, but my printer is closed, my printer shop. So I haven't been able to get larger copies in the area. Okay, so I don't want to go too dark. I will be able to soften some edges and make it even lighter in some areas later. But right now, I'm just putting the color where I think I need it. Stop there. Okay, so leaving a lighter area there. Then we're gonna have a line here too, and darker here again. So basically, you got to observe your photo, okay? The photo I provide you, I gave you. Okay, now here it goes lighter, got a little highlight, and then we go down, and then we go. Okay, so we're gonna leave it like this to dry by itself. And later we'll come back to it, okay? Here we're gonna have to add a few things too, but for the time being, leave it like that.